bring in my Sky News colleague, our political editor, Andrew Clennell. And Andrew, that was a really unusual way to start question time, a suspension of standing orders to move a motion which the government actually supported in praising Victorians for their achievement on the COVID response. What did you make of it?
Well, I actually thought it was a bit of an own goal by the opposition, or ended up as such, because they were clearly looking to back Daniel Andrews' approach in Victoria, Kieran. And yet the strongest and most passionate speech by far was Josh Frydenberg, who got up there as the Treasurer and essentially said this should never have happened in the first place. This is a tragedy. We'll stand with all Victorians. I thought it was a magnificent speech. It was delivered with anger and emotion. I guess we're so used to seeing inauthentic displays by politicians. It was good to see this level of authenticity from Josh Frydenberg. And look, I'm told that essentially there was an agreement initially for 2 speakers each side. A government source said that then Tony Burke on the Labor side declined to have further speakers, with the suggestion to me being that they didn't want all the Victorians, including Bill Shorten, to speak. But I've spoken to Tony Burke, or corresponded with him on this, and he tells me there was no blow-up as such. It was just the original agreement. They didn't want to truncate question time by too much. But talking to Kieran by text message prior to this, even he said in 20 years he hadn't seen this before, where the opposition moves a motion at the start of question time and then the government agrees to it, truncating questions. So there's plenty of this move suspension of standing orders at the end, right, for a political point.
Yeah,
but you don't normally have this situation,
I had not seen it. No, I haven't seen it before, Andrew. And just to pick up on your point, because I want to unpack this discussion about certainly Josh Frydenberg's speech. I agree with you. I thought it was his best contribution as a parliamentarian, the most authentic, passionate address to Parliament that I've seen from him as Treasurer or before that. It's just, and obviously, you know, as a country, we have done incredibly well. There are huge emotions at play in Victoria, from the Premier when he announced yesterday to the Treasurer today. And there are strongly held views on either side. They've got to a wonderful point, and we're wishing Victoria and all of them the best. It's just such a divided moment, Andrew. I sent a message on social media saying I thought it was the best speech I've seen from the Treasurer, and the responses have been incredible, both supporting, but most very, very critical, saying he misread the room, he was too angry and so on. It's just a really interesting point we're at right now as a nation, but also in Victoria, where they've achieved this wonderful milestone at a great cost. Many kids, you know, missing months and months of school, mental health challenges, business challenges, and there are strongly held views on both sides. At the moment, I'm seeing, you know, there just doesn't seem a lot of goodwill on both sides. What's your take on it?
Well, I've just been informed actually by someone very senior on the Labor side of politics that Tony Abbott also did this, Kieran. I'm not sure what that was in connection with. Yeah, very strong emotions. I mean, Josh Frydenberg really appealed there when he mentioned his own children, and he mentioned the fact they've missed 6 months of school. And that is a terrible thing. And of course, he mentioned all these other cases with self-harm and suicide. And he's saying, look, I happen to know these people, but there are lots of other cases out there. And I think one of the things about his speech I'd really like to see a lot more of in politics is so much of it, and I think to some extent this is why Donald Trump gets a bit of a following, because there's some more, as much as a lot of people hate him, because there's some authenticity there. And so much of this is confected, it's planned, it's 10 people in behind a two-way mirror and what they think in a marginal seat and just parroting out the lines that they say. And there was none of that here. He threw caution to the wind. In fact, Morrison congratulated on his speech, but I thought at one stage the PM was looking a little bit uncomfortable at how hard Josh Frydenberg was going. But I'd like to see a lot more of this. Let's have a listen.
The Victorian people have suffered so much. The pain, the cost, the loss of Victorian people. It should have never, ever have come to this. And with the greatest respect to those opposite, the comparison is not with the United Kingdom. The comparison is not with the United States. The comparison is with New South Wales, Queensland, Tasmania and South Australia, Mr Speaker. 6 months lost from schooling, Mr Speaker. 6 months that they will never ever get back. There is an inquiry, Mr Speaker, but unless that inquiry asks everybody who has questions to answer to provide evidence, we won't get the answers and the Victorian people will be left in the dark, Mr Speaker. And this Prime Minister has stood by Victorians every step of the way. More than $200 million per day going from this government to the people of Victoria.
Yeah, it was a passionate and a raw Josh Frydenberg, as you said, Andrew Clennell, quite rightly. And, you know, just to go back to this issue of a Victorian government which has, you know, and a Victorian people which has achieved this wonderful outcome that they're at the moment, and we're all hoping that the borders reopen for Christmas. I'd love that, so I can see my family in Melbourne, and we all hope that. And there's a lot of emotion here. But what the point I just want to go back to is, and this, I don't know whether it's a symptom of our very polarised society or whether it's this issue because it's so diabolical as a policy issue. I mean, if you have to look anywhere in the world that tries to grapple with this pandemic, and it is diabolical. There are huge costs either side. There are passionate opinions either side. And look, as I say, I'll repeat the fact, I think that was a really, really impressive speech from someone with strongly held views on the path taken, on the mistakes made in that state of Victoria, the mistakes made there through hotel quarantine and so on. But I just get back to that point. It is such a polarised moment when really it should be a moment of shared achievement and joy, I guess.
Well, it is polarised. I mean, you've got Dan Andrews still having enormous support, even though a lot of people in Victoria and elsewhere in Australia are angry that he mishandled the thing in the first place and that he locked down for too long. So, I mean, Josh Frydenberg, I guess he is just reflecting that. But I guess he felt that he had to speak for those Victorians who are really upset at the way the Victorian government's handled it, not just those who are patting them on the back and patting Victorians on the back at the moment for their sacrifices.
And there are many of them. There are many, many of them as well.